The skies had always been Deku's favorite place to clear his mind, but now they seemed to be mocking him. Dark, foreboding clouds gathered on the horizon, their edges churning with an otherworldly energy. The wind picked up, whipping through the streets of the village like a restless spirit, carrying with it the whispers of those who had lost loved ones to the storms that were beginning to brew. As Deku walked through the village, his eyes scanned the horizon, searching for any sign of what was coming. His stomach churned with anxiety, but he stood tall, his shoulders squaring as he faced the gathering tempests. This was the moment he had been preparing for. The moment when he would prove to himself and everyone else that he was worthy of becoming a hero. The village elder Hiroshi approached him, his eyes grave with concern. "Deku, child, please be careful. These storms are unlike any we've seen before. We don't know what's causing them, but I fear for the safety of our people." Deku nodded, his jaw set in determination. "I'll be fine, Hiroshi-san, I promise." Hiroshi's expression softened, and he placed a gentle hand on Deku's shoulder. "You're too brave for your own good, Deku, but I trust you. Just be vigilant and let me know if there's anything I can do to help." As the elder spoke, the wind howled louder, and the clouds seemed to coalesce into massive, swirling entities that twisted and writhed across the sky. The air was electric with an otherworldly energy, and Deku could feel it building inside him, a spark waiting to be fanned into flame. He quickened his pace, his eyes scanning the village for any signs of disruption. The streets were empty, save for a few stragglers who huddled in doorways, watching the storm with a mixture of fear and fascination. As Deku turned a corner, he saw Inko Midoriya, his mother, standing outside their small home. Her hands clasped together as if in prayer. Her eyes met his, and for a moment they just looked at each other, the noise of the storm receding into the background. "Deku," she called out, her voice carrying above the wind. "Be careful, child. I can feel it too, something's off." Deku smiled, feeling a surge of love and gratitude for his mother. "I'll be fine, Mummy," he said, using the affectionate term he'd always used when she was worried. But as he looked out at the stormy sky, he knew that this wasn't just any ordinary tempest. Something was wrong, something that went beyond the boundaries of their little village, and Deku was determined to find out what it was. He took a deep breath, feeling the energy inside him build and swirl. This was his chance to prove himself, to show everyone that he was more than just a quirkless boy from a small village. This was his moment to shine. With a fierce cry, Deku launched himself into the storm, his eyes fixed on the swirling clouds like a beacon of determination. The winds howled around him, threatening to consume him whole, but he stood tall, his spirit unbroken. As he disappeared into the heart of the tempest, Inko's voice called out after him, her words lost in the roar of the storm. "Deku, Deku, come back!" But Deku didn't turn back. He kept running, his quirkless body fueled by a burning need to uncover the truth behind the storms that threatened their village. And as he vanished into the heart of the tempest, the skies seemed to darken even further, as if the very fabric of reality was about to tear apart. The storm raged on, its fury unabated as Deku plunged deeper into the heart of the tempest. He stumbled upon a narrow crevice, a small opening in the rocks that seemed to serve as a gateway to a hidden world. Without hesitation, he squeezed through the crack, his eyes adjusting slowly to the dim light within. The air was stale and musty, heavy with the scent of aged parchment and dust. Deku's footsteps echoed off the stone walls as he made his way deeper into the crevice, his hands outstretched before him like a blind man navigating a familiar path. The silence was oppressive, a palpable weight that pressed upon his shoulders like a shroud. As he rounded a corner, a massive stone door came into view, adorned with ancient carvings that seemed to dance across its surface. Deku's fingers itched to touch the intricate symbols, to feel the rough texture of the stone beneath his fingertips. He reached out, his hand hesitating mere centimeters from the door before he grasped it firmly. The door creaked open, revealing a cavernous space filled with rows upon rows of ancient texts and murals depicting a long-lost civilization that wielded powerful magic. Deku's eyes widened in awe as he took in the sheer scale of the collection, his mind reeling with the implications. "Whoa," he breathed, his voice barely above a whisper. He wandered deeper into the cavern, running his fingers over the spines of ancient tomes bound in leather and adorned with strange symbols. The pages were yellowed and brittle, crackling softly as he turned them. The text spoke of a long-forgotten people who had harnessed the power of the elements to build sprawling cities and harness the raw energy of the storms. According to the texts, this civilization had been known as the Kokuryu, a name that Deku recognized from his mother's stories. They were said to have possessed an ancient magic that allowed them to communicate with the very fabric of reality itself. The Kokuryu had used this power to build incredible structures that defied gravity and harnessed the fury of the storms. As Deku delved deeper into the texts, he began to grasp the magnitude of the Kokuryu's achievements. They had built sprawling metropolises that floated above the ground, their foundations rooted deep within the earth. These cities had been constructed using a unique form of magic that allowed them to tap into the raw energy of the storms, channeling it into powerful artifacts and devices. One particular text caught Deku's eye, its pages adorned with intricate diagrams and equations that seemed to dance across the page. The text spoke of a device known as the Kokoro no Kaisuke, a mythical artifact rumored to hold the key to unlocking the secrets of the Kokuryu's magic. According to legend, the Kokoro no Kaisuke was a powerful crystal that contained the essence of the Kokuryu's magic. It was said to grant its wielder immense power and wisdom, allowing them to harness the raw energy of the storms with precision and control. Deku's heart quickened at the thought of possessing such an artifact, his mind racing with the possibilities. But as he gazed deeper into the text, a subtle warning crept into his consciousness. The Kokoro no Kaisuke was said to come with a terrible cost, one that would require the wielder to sacrifice their very soul in order to unlock its full potential. Deku's hand instinctively went to his chest, as if searching for the familiar reassuring presence of his mother's voice. A shiver ran down his spine as he realized that he might be staring into the very abyss itself. Was this really the key to unlocking the secrets of the storms? Or was it a path that would lead him straight into the depths of madness and despair? The questions swirled within Deku's mind like a maelstrom, leaving him feeling both exhilarated and terrified at the same time. He knew that he had stumbled upon something much bigger than himself, something that could potentially change the course of his destiny forever. And yet, as he gazed deeper into the text, he couldn't help but feel a sense of hope rising within him. Maybe, just maybe, this was the key to unlocking the secrets of the Kokuryu's magic. Maybe this was the path that would lead him to become the hero he had always dreamed of being. With newfound determination, Deku turned his gaze towards the exit, his mind racing with the possibilities that lay ahead. He knew that he still had a long way to go, but for the first time in months, he felt like he was truly walking in the right direction. As he emerged from the cavernous space, the storm raged on outside, its fury unabated. But Deku didn't feel afraid. Instead, he felt invigorated, his spirit fueled by a newfound sense of purpose and determination. He took a deep breath, feeling the cool night air fill his lungs. The world seemed brighter now, full of possibilities that stretched out before him like an endless highway. And with a newfound sense of purpose, Deku set off into the unknown, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Izuku's eyes scanned the rooftop, the cityscape unfolding before him like a canvas of steel and glass. The neon lights of Neo-Tokyo's skyscrapers pierced the night air, casting a kaleidoscope of colors across the darkening sky. He felt an overwhelming urge to capture this moment, to freeze it in time. As he raised his camera, the shutter clicked, and a burst of light illuminated the scene. The sound was almost deafening, and Izuku's eyes watered from the intensity. But it was exhilarating, like a spark had been lit within him. He continued to shoot, the camera's rhythm guiding his movements as he danced across the rooftop. The city hummed beneath his feet, a never-ending melody of cars and conversations. Izuku felt alive, connected to this urban jungle in a way he'd never experienced before. His heart pounded with excitement, his fingers moving with a life of their own. Suddenly, he sensed someone watching him. He spun around. Camera at the ready, but there was no one there. Shaking off the feeling, he turned back to the camera and continued to snap pictures. The exposure meter swung wildly, and Izuku laughed, feeling the thrill of discovery. As the night wore on, the city's lights began to fade, replaced by the soft glow of dawn. The rooftop's shadows retreated, revealing the outlines of buildings and streets below. Izuku packed up his camera, feeling a pang of disappointment at the end of the session. Just as he was about to leave, he noticed a figure standing in the doorway of a nearby building. It was a woman with piercing green eyes and jet-black hair that cascaded down her back like a waterfall. She wore a leather jacket, adorned with strange symbols that seemed to shimmer in the fading light. Their gazes met, and Izuku felt a jolt run through his veins. The woman's expression remained enigmatic, but there was an unmistakable glint of curiosity in her eyes. "Who are you?" Izuku asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The woman smiled, and her eyes crinkled at the corners. I'm someone who knows the city like its secrets, she replied, her voice husky and confident. And I think you're someone special, too. Izuku's heart skipped a beat as he took in the woman's words. There was something about her that resonated with him, something that made him want to believe in this mysterious world of hidden rooftops and secret gardens. Without another word, the woman turned and disappeared into the building. Izuku watched her go, his mind reeling with questions. What did she mean by hidden rooftops? And what secrets was she talking about? As he stood there, the city's sounds began to filter back in, like a distant hum. Izuku felt invigorated, as if he'd been awakened to a new reality. He took a deep breath, the night air filling his lungs, and raised his camera once more. The shutter clicked, and a photograph emerged. A snapshot of a world that was both familiar and unknown. It was a world waiting to be explored, one that Izuku was eager to uncover. With the woman's enigmatic words still echoing in his mind, Izuku set off into the city, camera in hand, ready to follow where the light would lead him. As Izuku's photography career gained momentum, he found himself lost in the city's underbelly. His lens had become his window to the world, and he reveled in its ability to capture the beauty in the mundane. Yet, amidst the throngs of people rushing to and fro, he began to notice something amiss. At first, it was just a fleeting glimpse of movement out of the corner of his eye, a figure darting between buildings, only to vanish into thin air. He chalked it up to the city's chaos. But as the days went by, these brief encounters became more frequent, and with each sighting, Izuku couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. He tried to brush it off as paranoia, but his mind wouldn't settle. The woman's enigmatic words echoed in his ear. The frame is not always what it seems. What did she mean? Was she hinting at something more sinister? One evening, as Izuku set up his camera on a deserted alleyway, he snapped a series of shots that would later become some of his most striking work. But amidst the blur of motion and color, one frame stood out. A woman with piercing green eyes stared back at him from the lens, her face obscured by the shadows. Izuku's heart skipped a beat as he deleted the photo, thinking it was just a trick of the light. Yet, when he reviewed his camera's memory card later that night, the image reappeared, etched in bold, high-definition clarity. The woman's eyes seemed to bore into his very soul. He felt a shiver run down his spine as he realized that this wasn't his work. Someone had manipulated his shots, adding the woman's enigmatic face to one of his photographs. The realization sent a wave of self-doubt crashing over him. Was he losing control? Was his talent being hijacked by some unknown force? As Izuku pondered these questions, the shadows on the alleyway seemed to grow longer, as if the very darkness itself was listening in on his thoughts. He took a step back, camera shaking in his hand, and that's when he saw a figure standing just beyond the reach of the flickering streetlights. It was the woman from the photograph. "Who are you?" Izuku demanded, trying to keep his voice steady. The woman didn't respond. Instead, she raised a hand, her fingers splayed like a bird in flight. The air around her seemed to ripple, as if reality itself was bending to accommodate her presence. And then, just as suddenly as she appeared, she vanished. Izuku's eyes remained fixed on the spot where she had stood, his mind reeling with questions and fears. He knew one thing for certain: he needed answers. And so, with a sense of determination that rivaled his passion for photography, he set out to uncover the truth behind the mysterious woman and her connection to his work. As the night wore on, Izuku's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps echoing through the alleyway. They were heavy, deliberate steps, as if someone was trying not to be seen. He turned to face the sound, camera at the ready, but when he looked up, there was no one there. The only thing left behind was a small black frame with his name scribbled on it in bold, red letters, Izuku Midoriya. Into the abyss, Midoriya's eyes locked onto the hazy figure, its two arms splayed out to the sides like a specter. The usually stoic Izuku couldn't help but crack a smile as Deku approached cautiously, his hand resting on the pocket of his quirk-enhanced jacket. It was a habit he'd developed during their battles against the League of Villains, and one that always helped him stay calm under pressure. Katsuki, Ochako, and Tenya trailed behind Deku, their faces reflecting a mix of curiosity and trepidation. The four of them had been friends since their days at UA, but nothing could have prepared them for the enigmatic message they'd received that morning. A whispered rumor of an ancient realm hidden within the Shadow Falls, where their forgotten pasts lay waiting to be uncovered. As Deku drew closer, his voice remained steady. "Help us," the ghost rasped, its words like dry leaves blowing in the wind. The word "us" hung in the air, a silent acknowledgement that they were not alone in this quest. Ochako's eyes widened as she reached out a hand to touch Deku's arm. Her fingers hovered mere millimeters from his skin, and he could sense her curiosity about the ghostly presence. Katsuki snorted, rolling his eyes at Achako's sudden gentleness. Great, because we weren't already freaked out enough. Tenya chuckled softly, a low, rumbling sound that put everyone at ease. Her quirk-enhanced senses seemed to be picking up on subtle vibrations in the air, and her gaze drifted around the desolate landscape as if searching for hidden clues. I think this is bigger than we thought, Tenya said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Deku nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. What secrets lay hidden within Shadow Falls, and why did he have an unshakable feeling that their pasts were inextricably linked? As the group stood there, frozen in uncertainty, a faint rustling echoed through the air. Leaves trembled and withered as if caught in a whirlwind. Deku's grip on his quirk-enhanced jacket tightened, sensing the sudden shift in energy. A chill crept up Achako's spine as she watched Deku's posture shift from relaxed to alert. Her own senses were on high alert, too, picking up whispers of a presence lurking just beyond the tree line. The air seemed to vibrate with anticipation, and even Katsuki's scowl faltered for an instant. "Let's move," Tenya said quietly, her voice like a gentle breeze carrying the seeds of war. With that, the group began to walk, their footsteps echoing through the desolate landscape as they ventured into the unknown. The silence was oppressive, weighed down by secrets and hidden truths. Deku's eyes kept straying toward the hazy figure, its ghostly form still standing watch over them like a guardian of forgotten memories. As the ground gave way to jagged rocks and twisted tree roots, the group encountered their first challenge. A ravine that seemed to swallow light and sound. The silence grew heavier until it felt like they were walking into a void. Deku raised his hand, palm outward, as if beckoning the darkness itself to come closer. "You ready for this?" he asked, his voice low and steady, a reassuring presence in the face of the unknown. Katsuki snorted, but Achako's eyes sparkled with curiosity. Tenya smiled softly, her gaze locked onto Deku's. Together they stepped into the abyss. The air seemed to writhe around them, tendrils of darkness coiling like living vines. Shadows pulsed with a malevolent energy, feeding off their fear and anxiety. It was as if Shadow Falls itself was alive, its presence suffocating and crushing. A faint light flickered on the horizon, casting eerie shadows across the ravine walls. The glow seemed to grow stronger, illuminating an ancient path that wound deeper into the darkness. As Deku led his friends along this twisted trail, the rustling grew louder, a cacophony of whispers that echoed through their minds. "What secrets lie within?" it asked, its voice like a rusty gate scraping against stone. Deku's eyes narrowed, focusing on the light ahead. He could sense something else following them, an unseen force, drawing them deeper into the abyss with every step. "You ready to uncover our pasts?" he called out, his voice carrying across the desolate landscape. "Or are we just pawns in a game we don't understand?" The rustling stopped abruptly, plunging the group into silence once more. Deku's eyes locked onto Katsuki's, a flicker of understanding passing between them. "Then let's do this," Katsuki said finally, his voice low and even a silent resolve etched on his face. With that, they stepped forward, walking headlong into the heart of Shadow Falls. The darkness swallowed them whole, leaving only an unsettling sense of anticipation in its wake. The ground beneath their feet grew slippery like wet stone as the group navigated the treacherous terrain. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and decay, and Midoriya could feel the weight of Shadow Fall's dark magic pressing down upon them. Ahead, a figure coalesced from the mist, its presence radiating an aura of ancient power. Deku's eyes widened as he took in the Guardian, its body a mass of writhing tendrils that seemed to defy the laws of nature. The figure's face was a twisted parody of humanity, with skin like dark, polished wood and eyes that burned with an inner fire. "Who are you?" Midoriya called out, his voice echoing off the mist-shrouded trees. The Guardian's gaze fell upon him, its eyes narrowing as if sizing him up. "I am the Keeper of the Falls," it rasped, its voice like the gentle lapping of waves against a rocky shore. "And you are?" "Izuku Midoriya," Deku replied, his hand instinctively going to the quirk-enhanced mask on his face. "This is Katsuki Bakugo Achako Uraraka, and who are you again?" He glanced at the Guardian uncertainly. The Keeper's gaze swept over the group, its tendrils writhing in agitation. "I sense that you are not here to desecrate this place," it stated, its voice dripping with an air of superiority. "But I will not be swayed by empty words or half-hearted intentions. Prove yourselves worthy, and I may grant you passage." Midoriya's eyes met Katsuki's, and he could sense the other boy's turmoil. What did the keeper want them to prove? Deku frowned, his mind racing with possibilities. What do we need to do? Ochako asked, her voice steady despite the unease etched on her face. The keeper's response was a low, rumbling chuckle. Ah, but that would be too easy. I shall present you with 3 trials. Each one will test a different aspect of your being: courage, compassion, and wisdom. If you succeed, the falls will yield its secrets to you. As the guardian spoke, the air around them began to distort, like ripples on the surface of a pond. Deku felt a strange energy building, as if the very fabric of reality was about to tear apart. We're ready, Midoriya declared, his voice firm and resolute. The keeper's gaze locked onto him, its eyes blazing with an inner fire. Then let us begin. With that, the world around them erupted into chaos, as if the very foundations of Shadow Falls were being torn asunder. In the blink of an eye, Midoriya found himself hurtling through a realm beyond his wildest dreams. Colors swirled around him like a mad whirlpool, and his stomach lurched with nausea. He fell, the sensation intensified by the knowledge that time was running out. "Katsuki!" he screamed, his voice lost in the maelstrom. The world coalesced around him. Leaving him gasping on solid ground, the keeper stood before him, its tendrils quivering like a living thing. "You have passed the first trial," it stated, its voice dripping with an air of approval. "But the next 2 trials will prove far more challenging." Midoriya's eyes met Katsuki's, and he could see the other boy's resolve was unwavering. Together they had overcome countless obstacles. Surely they could face whatever lay ahead. As the keeper spoke, a mighty roar echoed through the falls, and the ground began to shake once more. The sky grew dark, as if the very heavens themselves were being torn apart. Midoriya steeled himself for what was to come. The trials had only just begun, and he was ready. But as he stood there, poised on the brink of the unknown, a faint whisper echoed through his mind. "Or are we just pawns in a game we don't understand?" The voice was soft, almost imperceptible. But Midoriya's heart skipped a beat as he recognized its owner. "Katsuki!" he called out, turning to face his friend. But the other boy was gone, vanished into the swirling chaos of the falls. With a deep breath, Deku steeled himself and plunged forward, ready to face whatever lay ahead. For him, for Katsuki, and for the entire group, there could be no turning back now. The trials would reveal their secrets, one way or another. But only time would tell if they would emerge triumphant, or forever trapped in the labyrinthine depths of Shadow Falls. And so, with a sense of foreboding that hung over him like a shroud, Midoriya took his first step into the unknown. The world around him dissolved into chaos, leaving only one thing clear. Only those who walked hand in hand would ever find their way out of this abyss. The art studio's wooden door creaked as Deku flung it open, its contents spilling out onto the sidewalk. Colorful canvases, half-finished sculptures, and paint-splattered easels littered the pavement like a rainbow-hued tidal wave. Deku's eyes widened as he surveyed the chaos, his heart sinking with each passing second. The notice, yellowed with age, pinned to the doorframe, seemed to mock him. "Demolition notice, Studio 314 must be vacated by end of week." Deku's mind raced, his thoughts a jumbled mess of why and how. His studio was more than just a space, it was his sanctuary, his creative haven. He sprinted down the street, dodging pedestrians and leaping over puddles as he searched for an alternative location. The city seemed to shift around him, its towering skyscrapers and neon lights blurring together like a kaleidoscope of despair. As he ran, Deku's thoughts drifted back to his grandmother, who had passed away just last week. She'd been his muse, his guiding light in the dark world of art. Without her, everything felt hollow, like a painting without its subject. He arrived at the city's Central Park, the sun casting dappled shadows on the grass as he slowed to a stop. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the nearby trees, carrying with it the whispers of forgotten memories. Deku closed his eyes, letting the tranquility wash over him. That was when he noticed it, a young woman sitting on a bench, gazing at one of his posters tacked to a nearby lamppost. Her eyes were glassy, her face pale, and Deku sensed a deep sorrow emanating from her. He approached cautiously, not wanting to intrude on her private moment. As he drew closer, the woman's gaze snapped toward him, her pupils dilating like dark pools of water. For an instant, Deku thought he saw a glimmer of recognition, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. Her expression crumpled, and she turned away, disappearing into the crowd. Deku felt a shiver run down his spine. He watched her go, unsure what to make of the strange connection he'd just experienced. As he continued on his search for an alternative studio, his thoughts returned to his grandmother's words, Art has the power to heal, Deku. Don't let anyone take that away from you. The city seemed to be whispering secrets in his ear, its streets weaving a tale of wonder and discovery. Deku followed its call, his footsteps leading him down a path he couldn't yet see. The art of erasure was about to reveal itself to him, like the soft bloom of a hidden flower. As he walked, the skyscrapers seemed to close in around him, their windows reflecting the colors of his studio's poster. Deku smiled wryly. Perhaps this was where his art truly belonged, somewhere between the tangible world and the realm of memories. He paused at a street corner, considering the next step. The woman on the bench flashed back into his mind, her forgotten memories lingering like ghostly whispers. What if his art wasn't just a reflection of himself, but a key to unlocking others? Deku's heart quickened with excitement as he pondered this notion. A gust of wind swept through the square, scattering debris and carrying with it the faint scent of turpentine and linseed oil. The city seemed to hold its breath, waiting for Deku's next move. He smiled, a sense of purpose settling over him like a mantle. Deku's eyes sparkled as he began to explore, his footsteps leading him down an uncharted path where art, memories, and the human experience would collide in unexpected ways. The sun dipped below the city's horizon, casting long shadows across the pavement. Deku found himself standing before a dilapidated warehouse, its doors hung crookedly like a twisted grin. The faded sign creaked in the breeze. McGillicuddy's art supplies now closed. Deku's heart skipped a beat as he pushed open the creaking door, revealing a dimly lit world within. Cobwebs danced around dusty vases and stacks of paint jars, their labels yellowed with age. A faint scent of turpentine wafted through the air, enticing him deeper. As he explored the cramped space, Deku stumbled upon a series of canvases, each one bearing an image that seemed to sear itself into his retina. They depicted cityscapes at dusk, buildings melting like wax in a furnace, and people disappearing into the shadows. The artwork pulsed with a strange energy, like the beat of a forgotten heart. A chill ran down Deku's spine as he realized the canvases were not just mere depictions, they seemed to hold the essence of memories, each brushstroke imbuing them with a life of its own. He reached out, hesitantly touching the surface of one, and felt an electric jolt course through his veins. The city outside receded into the background as Deku delved deeper into the warehouse, uncovering a series of rooms filled with strange artifacts. A collection of vintage cameras stood on a shelf, their lenses glinting like cold, dead eyes. Next to them lay a series of journals, bound in worn leather and adorned with cryptic symbols. Deku's fingers trailed over the spines, feeling an inexplicable connection to each entry. The writer's words spilled onto the pages, fragmented thoughts, forgotten dreams, and half-remembered fears. He began to read aloud, the voices weaving together like a tapestry of forgotten memories. As he spoke, Deku noticed something peculiar. The people passing by on the street began to slow their pace, as if drawn in by an unseen force. Their faces reflected a deep longing, a yearning for something long forgotten. The woman from the park appeared among them, her eyes fixed intently on Deku's face. He read on, the words unlocking a hidden language that only he could decipher. The city responded, its skyscrapers seeming to twist and writhe like living serpents. Deku felt himself becoming one with the art, his creativity merging with the memories of strangers. The warehouse's air grew thick with an electric charge, the shadows coalescing into dark, humanoid figures that watched Deku from the periphery. He sensed their presence, but they remained just out of reach like ghostly echoes of a forgotten life. Deku's breathing quickened as he turned to face them. The figures vanished into thin air, leaving behind only the faint scent of paint and turpentine. He laughed, feeling an exhilaration that bordered on fear. The city was alive, and it was speaking through his art. The darkness closed in around him once more, but Deku was ready. His heart pounding, he began to sketch the lines flowing from his pencil like a river of creation. The city's vibrant energy pulsed through Deku like a living, breathing entity. He had always felt its presence, but now it seemed to be calling to him on a deeper level. With a spring in his step and a sense of wonder in his heart, he wandered the streets, taking in the sights and sounds of the bustling metropolis. As he turned a corner, a peculiar sensation washed over him like the air had grown heavier, as if reality itself was shifting to accommodate some unseen force. Deku's eyes darted about, searching for a source of this inexplicable feeling. That's when he saw her, a woman with an uncanny resemblance to himself. Her features were identical, same bright blue eyes, same messy brown hair, same mischievous grin, yet there was something different about her, something that set her apart from the echo of his own reflection. Deku felt a shiver run down his spine as their gazes met, and for an instant, time stood still. The woman's eyes locked onto his, and she took a step forward, her movements fluid and deliberate. "Deku," she repeated, her voice like a gentle breeze on a summer's day. Deku's heart skipped a beat as he processed the sound of his own name on another person's lips. A flutter in his chest betrayed his unease, but he forced himself to speak, his voice steady and calm. "Who are you?" Deku asked, trying to keep the wariness from his tone. The woman's smile faltered, and for an instant, her eyes seemed to cloud over like a veil of secrecy had been lifted, revealing a depth that was almost too much to bear. Then her expression smoothed out, and she said, "My name is Deku, too." Deku's mind reeled as he tried to wrap his head around this impossible situation. But how?" he stammered. The woman's eyes drifted away, as if seeking a refuge from the question. Her gaze settled on a small silver pendant that hung from her neck. An image of quirk symbol adorns it, and it seemed to be the only thing keeping Deku's doppelganger grounded in reality. "We share a connection," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Deku's eyes widened as he watched his own pendant, suspended from his neck like a promise of power. Had he somehow miraculously found his long-lost twin? The thought sent his mind reeling with questions and doubts. Could this stranger be the key to unlocking the secrets of his own past? Without thinking, Deku took another step forward, as if drawn by an unseen force. His doppelganger mirrored his movement, her eyes never leaving his face. "I've been searching for you," she said, her words laced with an undercurrent of urgency. The air seemed to thicken, like the city's energy had coalesced around them. Deku felt his heart pounding in time with hers, as if their two hearts beat as one. "For what?" he asked, his voice barely audible over the pounding of his own pulse. Her eyes seemed to bore into his very soul, and for an instant, Deku saw a glimmer of something that looked uncannily like fear. Something that made him realize that this stranger in the mirror was not just a duplicate, but a reflection of himself, a shadowy echo that had been hiding in plain sight. "You're running from them," she said, her words laced with an unmistakable hint of warning. Deku's grip on his sketchbook tightened, as if he could grasp the threads of reality if only he could keep pace with this stranger's words. "Who are them?" he asked, his voice laced with a growing sense of trepidation. His doppelganger took another step closer, her eyes burning with an inner fire that made Deku's heart skip another beat. "You'll find out soon enough," she said, her words barely above a whisper. "But for now, let's just say you're not the only one who's been erased." With that, her gaze dropped to her pendant, and Deku felt the world around him tilt on its axis, like he was standing on the edge of a precipice, staring into the void. As the city lights seemed to swirl around them like a kaleidoscope, Deku realized that his journey had only just begun. He was no longer alone in this vast, concrete jungle, and neither was his past. Izuku's eyes snapped back to reality as he took the girl's hand, his face flushing with mortification. He had been lost in thought, pondering the absurdity of the guy across the street who had just committed an act of public indecency. The image of the man's rear end flailing wildly in the air was seared into Izuku's brain, and he couldn't help but wonder if he would ever live it down. The girl's gaze met his, her eyes a deep shade of brown that seemed to hold a world of amusement. "You're okay," she said, her voice husky and confident, like a warm summer breeze on a sweltering day. "Just a little distracted." Izuku felt his face heat up further as he processed her words. Distraught? He was the one who had been caught off guard by the sudden flash of nudity. The girl, on the other hand, seemed to be taking it in stride, her expression a mask of polite interest. He took a deep breath and attempted to compose himself, his awkwardness reasserting itself like an old habit. I am sorry, what was that?" he stammered, the words spilling out in a jumbled mess. The girl's smile faltered for a fraction of a second before she recovered, her eyes sparkling with mirth. "Don't worry about it," she said, her voice dripping with a soothing tone that made Izuku feel like he was drowning in a sea of calm. "It happens to the best of us." As she spoke, Izuku noticed the way her arm moved, the fluidity of her motion as she raised an eyebrow and tilted her head to one side. It was almost seductive. He felt his chest tighten, his heart rate quickening in a way that had nothing to do with the sudden display of underwear. He shook off the feeling, chiding himself for being ridiculous. What was he supposed to be? The girl's new best friend? The girl's grip on his hand tightened, her fingers wrapping around his like a vice. "Hey, are you okay?" she asked, her voice low and urgent. "You seem a little off." Izuku's eyes darted to the man across the street who was still standing there looking sheepish. He mouthed a silent apology, wondering if he should just take his dignity and run, but before he could react, the girl leaned in closer, her face inches from his. "I'm Sakura," she said, her breath tickling his skin. "And you are?" Izuku's eyes locked onto hers, his heart skipping a beat as he searched for the right words. He wasn't exactly sure how to respond, but there was something about Sakura that made him want to open up, to share his innermost thoughts with her. As if sensing his hesitation, Sakura's smile returned, this time with a hint of mischief in her eyes. "Hey," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm here for you." And with that, Izuku felt the ground beneath him shift, like an earthquake had struck without warning. He wasn't sure what was happening or where it would lead, but he knew one thing: his life was about to change in ways he couldn't even begin to imagine. The man across the street, still looking embarrassed, stumbled away as Sakura released Izuku's hand and turned to face him. "Sorry again," she said, her voice a gentle breeze on a summer day. "I hope you're okay." As they watched the man disappear into the crowd, Sakura leaned in closer, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "So," she said, her voice husky, "tell me about yourself." Izuku's heart skipped a beat as he met her gaze, his mind racing with possibilities. What would he say to this enigmatic girl? Would he be able to keep up with her whirlwind pace, or would he get lost in the undertow of her charisma? As he pondered the question, Sakura's fingers brushed against his wrist, sending a jolt of electricity through his body. It was like a key had been inserted into a lock, and suddenly everything clicked into place. Izuku knew that this chance encounter with Sakura would be the start of something incredible, something that would change the course of his life forever. And with that, Izuku's eyes locked onto Sakura's, his heart pounding in anticipation. What lay ahead? Only time would tell. As they stood there, suspended in a sea of uncertainty, the city around them seemed to grow darker, the shadows deepening like secrets waiting to be uncovered. The wind picked up, whispering rumors of a world beyond their wildest dreams. Izuku's gaze never wavered from Sakura's face as he spoke, his words tumbling out in a rush. "My name is Izuku," he said, "and I'm not really sure who I am yet." Sakura's eyes widened, her smile faltering for a moment before she nodded, her face alight with excitement. "That's okay," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We can figure it out together." As the words left her lips, Izuku felt his heart soar, like a bird taking flight into the unknown. He knew that he was in for the ride of his life, and with Sakura by his side, he was ready to face whatever lay ahead, no matter how daunting it seemed. Izuku's face flushed with embarrassment as he turned to Sakura, his mind still reeling from the unexpected apology. I'm sorry, what was that?" he stammered, trying to compose himself. Sakura's eyes sparkled with amusement, and she chuckled, a low, throaty sound that made Izuku's heart skip a beat. "You didn't hear anything, did you?" she teased, her voice laced with mischief. Izuku shook his head, feeling a little silly for not catching on sooner. "And no, I don't think so," he admitted, trying to play it cool despite the growing sense of unease in his stomach. As they walked down the street, Sakura fell into step beside him, her long strides easily matching his shorter pace. The sunlight cast dappled shadows on the pavement, and Izuku couldn't help but feel like he was being watched. He glanced around, but the street was empty, except for a few passers-by casting curious glances their way. "So, what's it like being a quirkless?" Sakura asked, her tone neutral but with a hint of curiosity. Izuku shrugged, feeling a sense of trepidation wash over him. "It's different," he said, searching for words. "I don't have any superpowers and I feel like an outcast." Sakura's expression softened and she reached out to place a hand on his arm. Her touch sent shivers down Izuku's spine, but he didn't pull away, instead letting her warmth seep into him. "It's not fair, is it?" Sakura said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You deserve just as much chance as anyone else." Izuku looked at her, feeling a surge of gratitude towards this girl who seemed to understand him more than anyone else. "Thanks, Sakura," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "Just talking to you makes me feel like I can handle anything." As they turned a corner, a sleek black car came to a stop beside them, the window sliding down to reveal a chiseled-jawed face with piercing blue eyes. The man's gaze locked onto Izuku, and for a moment time stood still. "Ah, Kakihara," Sakura said, her tone dripping with sarcasm, "always so punctual." Izuku's instinct screamed at him to be wary, but the man's calm demeanor put him on edge. "Kakihara-sensei," he said, his voice a little too formal. The man smiled, revealing perfect white teeth, and stepped out of the car, his tailored suit accentuating his imposing physique. I see you're getting to know each other, Izuku, he said, his eyes never leaving Izuku's face. I hope you're enjoying it. Sakura's grip on Izuku's arm tightened and she took a step forward, her eyes flashing with defiance. We're just having a nice conversation, Kakehara-sensei, she said, her voice cool. Kakehara chuckled, the sound low and menacing. I'm sure you are, he said, his gaze flicking to Sakura before returning to Izuku. But I have some news that might interest you, Izuku. As Kakehara began to speak, Izuku felt a sense of unease wash over him, like the ground beneath his feet was shifting. What did this man want with him? And what did he have planned? The car door closed behind Kakehara, and the engine roared back to life, casting a dark shadow over the street. Sakura's grip on Izuku's arm remained firm, but her eyes seemed to be urging him forward into a world of unknown danger. With a deep breath, Izuku nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. I'm listening, he said, trying to sound braver than he felt. As the car pulled away, Kakehara's voice echoed back, leaving Izuku with a sense of foreboding that he couldn't shake. You won't regret this, Izuku, he said, before disappearing into the distance. Sakura turned to Izuku, her eyes searching his face. What was that all about? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Izuku hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal, but something about Sakura's concerned expression made him trust her completely. He wants me to go to you, a high school, he said, his words spilling out in a rush. And I have no idea what that means. Sakura's face lit up with excitement, but it was quickly replaced by concern. I see, she said, her voice measured. Well, then we'll just have to figure it out together. As they watched the car disappear into the distance, Izuku felt a sense of trepidation wash over him. What lay ahead, and would he be able to handle it with Sakura by his side? The streets seemed to stretch out before them like a labyrinth, full of twists and turns that would lead them to unknown destinations. But one thing was certain, Izuku was ready to face whatever came next, as long as Sakura was by his side. Their footsteps echoed off the buildings as they walked on, their senses heightened, as if waiting for something or someone around the corner. The city seemed to be holding its breath, like a held secret, and Izuku felt like he was walking into the unknown with no safety net in sight. But Sakura's hand was still clasped in his, a reassuring weight that made him feel less alone. And as they turned another corner, the lights of a nearby cafe beckoned. Like a warm haven from the darkness ahead. Hey, Izuku, Sakura said, her voice a gentle whisper in his ear. Yeah, if you don't mind me saying so, you look kinda pale. Izuku glanced down at himself, feeling a flush rise to his cheeks. I'm just a little nervous, that's all, he admitted. Sakura's grip on his arm tightened and she smiled, her eyes sparkling with amusement. Don't worry, I get it, she said. We'll face whatever comes next together. As they entered the cafe, Izuku felt a sense of relief wash over him. Maybe, just maybe, things wouldn't be so bad after all. But as they slid into a booth and ordered their drinks, Izuku couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, like the air was thick with tension, waiting to snap and unleash its fury. And Kakehara's parting words still echoed in his mind. You won't regret this, Izuku. Regret? What could he possibly regret? The question haunted him as he sipped his milkshake, his eyes scanning the cafe for any sign of danger. But all he saw was Sakura's smiling face and a world full of possibilities that seemed to stretch out before them like an endless highway. Or maybe it was just the beginning of the end. Izuku's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of his phone buzzing on the table. He picked it up, expecting a text from his mom or maybe even Sakura. But instead, he saw a message from an unknown number. Meet me at the old clock tower at midnight, the message read. Come alone. Izuku's heart skipped a beat as he showed the phone to Sakura, her eyes wide with concern. What is it? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Izuku's mind was racing, trying to process the cryptic message. Who could have sent this, and what did they want? As they sat there, frozen in indecision, the clock on the wall ticked away. Its steady rhythm a reminder that time was running out. And Izuku knew that he had to make a choice, face whatever lay ahead with Sakura by his side, or walk into the unknown alone. The piece was nice, Izuku thought to himself as he sat at his easel, brushes poised in midair. It wasn't often that he got to focus on his art without distractions, but today felt different. The sky outside seemed to match the mood within him, a swirling mix of blues and grays, like the emotions churning inside his chest. His friends had left hours ago, each lost in their own world. Kaken was probably out on patrol with Ochako, while Mina had slipped away to her favorite bookstore. Izuku's thoughts drifted to Midoriya, who had been helping him with his art, but even that seemed like a distant memory now. The other boy had been acting strange lately, always rushing through their sessions and never giving Izuku the attention he craved. As he dipped his brush into the vibrant blue paint, Izuku felt an inexplicable shiver run down his spine. It was as if the colors on his palette were alive, pulsing with a power that only he could feel. He tried to shake off the sensation, telling himself it was just fatigue, but the excitement refused to subside. With bold strokes, Izuku began to bring his latest masterpiece to life. The canvas transformed into a world of breathtaking beauty, rolling hills of emerald green, sunflowers stretching towards the sky like golden fingers, and a bright blue lake that shimmered with a soft light. The colors danced across the surface, like a symphony of wonder. Izuku's eyes widened as he watched his creation take shape before him. It was as if the world had been waiting for this moment, patiently holding its breath until he brought forth its hidden beauty. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the trees, and the sound of birdsong filled the air. It was like music to his ears. The room began to vibrate with an otherworldly energy, as if the very fabric of reality was being woven into Izuku's artwork. His heart pounded in his chest, excitement mingling with fear. What was happening to him? Why did this feel so right? Just as he was about to add the final touches, a faint tremor shook the easel. Colors swirled and blurred like watercolors in the rain. Izuku's vision wavered and he stumbled back, his brush hand trembling. "No, no, no," he muttered, panic creeping into his voice. He couldn't control this. It was happening too fast, out of his grasp. A burst of chaotic energy exploded from the canvas, sending paint flying in all directions. The room filled with an ear-piercing shriek, like the sound of 1,000 shattering glass shards. Izuku's vision blurred and he collapsed to the floor, gasping for breath. When his eyes opened again, the world had returned to normal. The colors were calm, the room quiet, and the paint had settled back into its containers. Breathing slowly, Izuku sat up, his mind racing with questions. What was happening to him? Why couldn't he control this power? And what would happen if it got out of hand? He stared at the canvas, now transformed back into a simple blank sheet of paper. A small part of him whispered that he wanted to explore this newfound ability to see where it would take him and what secrets it held. But another part of him screamed to keep his mouth shut, to pretend that nothing had happened, and to wait for the dust to settle before making any decisions. The war between these two conflicting desires still raged within him as he slowly got to his feet, brush in hand. And with a quiet determination, Izuku began to paint once more, the colors on his palette watching him like old friends, waiting to see what this new world of possibilities had in store for him. The sun had barely risen over Artisan's Academy, but already the day felt like it was off to a strange start. Izuku Midoriya, still rubbing the sleep from his eyes, made his way to the communal kitchen to grab a quick breakfast before class. As he waited in line, he noticed that Midori Yagi was acting off. Midori, usually the epitome of calm and collected, was fidgeting with her hands like a nervous child. Izuku raised an eyebrow, wondering what could be causing his friend's usual composure to falter. When it was finally his turn to order, Midori cut him off mid-sentence, her voice laced with urgency. "Izuku, I forgot something," she said, her eyes darting around the room as if searching for an escape route. Izuku's brow furrowed in concern. "Forgot what?" Midori hesitated, her lips twisting into a pained expression. "How to play the piano." Izuku's jaw dropped. Midori was a prodigy on the instrument, and yet she'd forgotten how to play. It didn't sit right with him. "That's not possible," he said, trying to hide his skepticism. But before he could press the issue further, their friends began to file in, all of them sporting strange looks on their faces. Katsuki Bakugo, usually the king of confidence, was scowling at his reflection in a nearby window pane, his eyes narrowed as if searching for an enemy that wasn't quite there. "Hey, guys," Katsuki muttered, his tone dismissive. "What's going on?" Mina Ashido, usually a font of knowledge and insight, looked like she'd just stumbled out of a dream. Her eyes were unfocused, her gaze drifting over the room as if searching for something that was just out of reach. "I forgot my password," Mina said, her voice barely above a whisper. The group exchanged concerned glances, their faces a mirror image of confusion and frustration. Izuku's instincts told him that this wasn't just a case of simple forgetfulness, there was something more at play here. As the morning progressed, things only got stranger. Ochako Uraraka, usually a paragon of confidence and poise, stumbled out of the art studio, her hands covered in paint and her eyes streaming with tears. I forgot how to draw," she stammered, her voice cracking. The group gathered around her trying to offer words of encouragement, but it was clear that no one had any answers. Izuku's determination flared to life, his mind racing with possibilities. He suspected that there was more to these memory lapses than met the eye, and he aimed to find out what. "Guys, I think we're being punked," Katsuki said, his voice laced with sarcasm. "Maybe someone's playing a prank on us." Izuku shot him a warning glance. "It's not funny, Katsuki. We need to figure out what's going on here." But before he could press the issue further, their teacher, Professor Yuki, strode into the kitchen, his face grave with concern. "Students, I need to speak with you all," he said, his voice low and urgent. "We've had reports of unusual occurrences throughout the academy. Equipment malfunctioning, strange noises at night, and some of you have even forgotten important events." The group exchanged worried glances, their faces reflecting a mix of fear and confusion. "What do you think is going on?" Mina asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Professor Yuki's expression was grim. "I'm not sure, but I believe it may be connected to our new student, the one who transferred in last week." The group fell silent, their eyes drifting towards the entrance of the kitchen where Izuku knew the professor was watching them, waiting for his response. "Ah, Professor Yuki-san," Izuku said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I think I may know something about that student." But before he could continue, Katsuki cut in, his voice laced with skepticism. "Izuku's been going on and on about some ghost, remember?" The group turned to face him, their faces a mix of amusement and annoyance. "Katsuki, that was just a one-time thing," Izuku protested, trying to defend himself. But the damage was done. The group had already dismissed his concerns, and now they were turning on him. Izuku's determination faltered for a moment, replaced by frustration and anger. But as he looked around at his friends, he knew that he couldn't give up. "I'll be fine," he said, his voice firm, "and I'll figure out what's going on." With that, he turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving his friends to wonder if they'd just imagined an entire conversation about a ghost. But Izuku knew better. He knew that there was more to this story than met the eye, and he aimed to uncover it. As he made his way back to his dormitory, he couldn't shake off the feeling that he was being watched. He glanced over his shoulder, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. Just as he reached the entrance to the dorms, a piece of paper fluttered to the ground in front of him. It was a note written in a hasty scrawl. "Izuku, I remember." The word sent shivers down his spine. Who wrote this? And what did it mean? Izuku's determination reignited. He picked up the note and tucked it into his pocket, his mind racing with possibilities. He knew that he was onto something big, and he was going to see it through to the end. As he walked away from the note, he couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement. The mystery had begun, and Izuku Midoriya was ready to unravel its secrets. But little did he know, this was just the beginning.